Welcome back to the Broker Advisory Work Group. I appreciate everybody's attendance. I do have to read the antitrust policy to get us started. So RESO strives to increase competition in the marketplace and will not be a forum for anti-competitive conduct. The RESO antitrust policy governs the activities of RESO and its members, including this meeting. A link to the policy was emailed to you with the meeting agenda. Please consult RESO's counsel if you have any questions about the policy. So now that we got the fun stuff out of the way, welcome. Everybody have a Bloody Mary? Everybody ready to go? You guys are all quiet. I expect that to get rowdier as those get drank during the session. So my name is Jeff Bosch. I'm actually the chair of the RESO Broker Advisory Work Group. Our co-chair, Nina, can't be with us today, but I'm very happy to have her on board. And we have a special guest, Caitlin McCrory with Realogy. McCrory. Oh, McCrory, thank you.
It's a hard name to say, and it's my name, and when I'm tired, sometimes I botch it, and it's my own name.
There you go.
McCrory.
And I should have totally got this right because we had the opportunity to share an Uber ride on the way over, which was so. If you have the opportunity to take a ride back and forth to the airport, Caitlin's a fun one to have.
Thank you. Likewise.
Good time.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, one of the nice things that I think has happened in broker advisory is the opportunity to have these conversations, right, with brokers and broker representatives that are in the field and really are, in the thick of things that RESO is interacting with. So we had a little bit of some idea on some conversation. If we have a little bit of Q&A time afterwards, we'll take advantage of that. But ultimately, I wanted to start off by letting Caitlin tell us a little bit about herself, because many of us in the room have had the opportunity to work with you, but not everybody knows you. So tell us a little bit about your journey in the industry so far.
Yeah, so I started working in the industry as a communications director for a local MLS and association, and splitting my time between those two organizations, I found myself really drawn to the MLS side of things. I was really interested in sort of the life cycle of a listing and with the data, and so I was looking for more of an opportunity to get involved and invested in that aspect, and from there went to NAR, where I was the MLS manager, and it was just a first-rate education into MLS policy, implementation of policy, the black, white, gray area involved in policy and applying policy. And I loved that experience, built a great network working there.
Okay.
And I think that's maybe where we met the first time.
I think so. Yep.
And then from there, I went to Redfin, doing industry relations. And that was an amazing experience as well. Tech brokerage, applying policy in a lot of different unique ways and working with standards to ingest data. And then just last July, I made the jump to Realogy, which is a whole different experience, working at a holding company with many different brands, many different websites, and over 500 MLSs across the country. So standards is something that is really near and dear to our heart at Realogy, and it's something I think is the common thread in the broker advisory work group, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And we'll dig into that a little bit as we go through. If you actually have had the opportunity to connect with Caitlin on LinkedIn, in your bio, it actually says that you are a self-professed real estate data nerd, and that it's your goal to help the real estate industry move forward in the consumer's best interest. So what do you love about industry relations, and why are brokers hiring industry relations teams?
I love industry relations because it's that whole concept of a rising tide lifts all boats. Working together, there's a lot of different stakeholders in the industry who all have their own perspective and strategy when it comes to how things operate. And I like the idea of just working with everyone and for the betterment of the industry as a whole. And industry relations isn't just a brokerage title. I mean, Dana Bennett was just on stage and she works at an MLS, and Bob Evans at Realtor.com. So we're all over the place. I think the role was created because there's so many moving parts in the industry, and there's so many different components, and having an expert who understands all of those moving pieces to sort of lead the charge and to prioritize. And that's the existence of the role and why there's so many of us out there at this point.
All right, good deal. Give us a little bit of insight on Realogy's view on the current state of tech in the industry.
Yeah, so I think there's an NAR stat out there, and you can quote me if I'm right, but don't quote me if this is wrong, that 90% of consumers say that they would refer their agent that they worked with or use them again, but only 17% actually do when the time
Right.
comes. So the Realogy philosophy is, instead of reestablishing that connection our agents have with their consumers or reigniting that, but how do we keep that relationship? How do we maintain that relationship so when the time comes for them to sell again, they look to their trusted advisor, who 90% of them would refer out to
Right.
others or work with again. And we see technology as the way to maintain that relationship and to keep that relationship through intuitive tools. And so we're very invested in an open ecosystem right now. Realogy's unique in the sense that we partner with a ton of vendors, and we give our agents the opportunity to sort of pick and choose what works best for them and their relationships with their clients in their market. And so having partnerships with a ton of vendors, being in over 500 plus MLSs, it's really important to be involved in RESO and have these standards as we're, having so many different pieces to the puzzle.
Right. And I would say, as a former broker myself, absolutely that stat is correct as far as being able to have those agents have the ability to have tools to keep that connection going.
Yeah.
So they don't lose sight of that. So to that point, do you have any tangible real world stories about how your team and RESO standards led to efficiencies in some way?
Yeah, so again, being in over 500 MLSs, having a national strategy to scale when ingesting listings has been massive, and you can point to standards specifically for that effort. And then speaking to the products and the groups that we're working with, like if we go into the marketplace and we partner with MoxieWorks, having standards in place not only for scaling that partnership, but also for training with agents when they use that product and onboarding, having some sort of a consistent approach across the board is far more efficient and saves an insane amount of time, resources, money, all of that fun stuff.
Okay, good deal.
So that's Realogy's perspective.
That's Realogy's perspective.
But you're the chair of the broker advisory work group. So you hear from brokerages often in that work group about how they interact with RESO standards, what works for them. Can you talk about that?
Well, I would like to say that's true, but actually part of this discussion today, right, is how to get people involved in broker advisory.
Yeah.
Because not everybody has a Caitlin, right? And one of the things that we see is whether it's MLS or a particular vendor or a brokerage, right, there's a certain scale in which an organization can field an industry relations person. And the broker advisory group has got a really dedicated core that attends the meetings, right? But it's a little bit harder to bring people into that, right? Especially when you get to smaller and mid-sized organizations. And I can say this because I was a managing broker. Sometimes the quote broker, whoever that person is the least techie person in the room, right? There are some legitimate exceptions to that. Some of them are in the room today. But truthfully, I think that there is a huge disconnect. I loved when somebody said earlier that the people in their market actually know what RESO is, because my experience early on in broker advisory was I would talk about RESO, and I'm talking CTOs of major national franchises would look at me and say, I don't know what that is, right? So I think that there is an opportunity to, through these conversations and really through all of us, trying to connect brokers back in, I think there's an opportunity to have a voice that's really important, which is why we spend our time doing this, right? Because there are organizations for everything in real estate, but to get the brokers to come in and talk about data, and by the way, they don't always have the right words. They don't know exactly, they might not know what an API is, they might not know things about how fields and anything that you've talked about today, data mapping, might be a completely foreign concept to them, but they know when things are broken, right? And they just need to be able to come and be part of the conversation.
Yeah, I think that's a good call out, because part of broker engagement that I think is important is being candid, right? So when I can go on and on about how standards have helped scale and helped us ingest listings, but I think it's also important to call a spade a spade. It's not perfect. There's still work to be done. That's why we have work groups. That's why we're all here today. And there are opportunities for progress. And I think having those conversations with brokers really makes a difference. So standards have sort of set the language that we all speak, but we now need to transform into speaking the same dialect. So like a non-real estate example for you, I'm from Wisconsin. We call water fountains bubblers, which is, and there's drinking fountains, water fountains, and finding the common unifier across the board, especially for the data dictionary when it comes to some of these fields, is really important and it's crucial. And having those conversations like, yeah, it's flawed, but it's an imperfect process, but we can get there if, you know, we have these conversations and we talk about it.
Absolutely. And I think we even heard a little bit about that earlier today about, you know, picking the choice that is in the data dictionary and using that to go through. And it is really interesting, I will say, my time here and being involved with everyone that spends time with broker advisory, it really just gives you the ability to see where you can have a conversation. Nina, who couldn't be here today, and actually Greg gave us trouble because we were at a different convention, and he's like, you are talking about broker advisory, right? And we cornered this poor guy and chatted him up for like 45 minutes. Like, I think he just wanted to get to the bar, and we were like busy worrying about standards and stuff. But it was interesting because even though he didn't really come prepared to have that conversation, he had real problems that he was trying to work through, right? And it was the ability to give him a place where he could have a voice. So that was a good thing. So do you have any other thoughts on getting people to be involved in broker advisory?
Yeah, I think broker engagement is crucial. I think during Sam's keynote, he talked about the end data consumer and getting folks involved in kind of understanding the life cycle of how everything operates. The best way, I think, to get folks involved is to be a RESO evangelist, to talk about the benefits of standardizations, what all of the work groups are working on, to be candid, to have some of those difficult conversations like, yeah, it's not perfect, but we can totally get there. We're working towards a goal, a great goal. And then I think authenticity and enthusiasm is really compelling, and it's intoxicating. And so being that evangelist, going out there and talking about the importance of this and speaking in layman's terms to folks, because to your point, right, it's not, sometimes like the transactional brokers are not the most techie, but really kind of explaining once you get down to it, that common denominator, and explain this is how this impacts your business. You have to bring it back to the why. Why does this matter for me? Why does this matter to my business? And as soon as you explain it to people, they're like, oh my goodness, yeah, that makes complete sense. So I think being enthusiastic, being an evangelist is helpful, especially in this business, which is a relationship business. We're always, talking with each other. And I think anytime you can sort of mention the benefits is important. Do you have any?
I like the evangelist thing. I wish I could quote the person in the room that said, I think it was either 1 or 2 years ago, said, I'll be your data dad, talking about adopting brokers. I mean, really that is the case, right? To just go out and start those conversations because, a lot of times to your point about transactional, the brokers are head down. They're worried about ordinances and changes and contract changes, and they know that the data flows, but usually they rely on their vendors or the MLSs, and they don't really have conversations that help them understand the efficiencies and why certain choices are made.
Or even applying it to products. Like, oh wait, I was at Inman, I saw this really cool tool, I'd love to use it. Oh, it's only in 15 MLSs and your MLS is not that MLS.
Yep.
Through standards, that vendor can scale and then work with that MLS. So trying to explain it in the simple terms that affect their business, I think is really crucial. And then if I find that once you do, people are like, oh, okay, yeah, interesting, let me get involved.
Right. Absolutely. So there's our ask as far as broker advisory today. As we kind of go through the session a little bit, last year there was just a flurry of policy discussions.
An insane amount.
An insane amount. There you go. Especially if you were part of having to implement any of that. An insane amount would be a good word. But really, ultimately, what do you think was driving all that conversation?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of different stakeholders in our ecosystem, and there's a lot of advancements that we can make when it comes to policy. And so I think it's important to answer that question is to sort of talk about the life cycle of how a bill becomes a law, like that old, what is it, Schoolhouse Rock?
Schoolhouse
song.
Rock. There you go.
I feel like we need one of those for MLS. I've been saying that for
I'm
years.
just a bill on
There you
Capitol
go.
Hill. Yeah.
We said we weren't going to sing karaoke
I
up
know,
here,
we
and
did.
here you go.
And I can't sing.
So you have policy leaders like CMLS, the Council of Multiple Listing Services, pushing forward policy concepts to the National Association of Realtors after doing a lot of feedback work in talking with different stakeholders in the industry. What works, what doesn't, what do we need, where can we improve efficiencies? So you have them working to push things to NAR. NAR has that cumbersome committee voting process that they go through in order to pass some of these data policies. And then RESO comes in when it comes to implementation and says, wait, this is how this could work. This concept can't work. This is how we would propose doing something along these lines. And I myself have fallen victim to this last year, passing or putting forward a policy on enhanced attribution. I was fielding questions, well, how will this be implemented? How is this going to work? And my response was, oh, RESO will take care of it. RESO's got it. They have it figured out. And so I think having an understanding for this group of how everything sort of flows and moves through the process and all of the stakeholders, and getting sort of RESO buy-in is important through that process, especially when it comes to when something is finally passed.
Right.
You have the CMLSs of the world who's generating the feedback to push good policy forward. You have RESO who's helping with implementation and creating a standard experience so that when the end data consumers go to take in new fields from their data feeds, like I think yesterday the data dictionary work group passed something on attribution, a new field name, which is thank you, that's great. So when the end data consumers go to take in that new data or display that new data, there is that unified experience, both for agents and brokers, but also for consumers who are working with their agents, their trusted advisors in this process.
And I would say, RESO definitely has a role on the back end in the process, but it is, especially in broker advisory, this is where sometimes these conversations start, right? They might not germinate in another area, right? But it comes back to a need, and maybe I can't always voice the technical aspect or how I'll get from point A to point B, but hey, this is a problem. This is something we're working on. I know pain points is always a favorite session in this group. I purposely booked my flight later so I could make the whole thing because I think at Kiowa it went like 3 hours or something insane like that. I don't remember.
That was a spicy one too.
That was a spice. I mean, there should be a Bloody Mary bar in the middle of that session. I mean, but ultimately, right, these conversations, the world changes pretty fast, right? We all kind of get stuck in our, rhythm and method of doing things, but there's real needs that bubble up out there, and sometimes they bubble up for a while, and to be able to get those out and get those in the open, I think RESO does serve a role in that as well, right?
Yeah,
to get that started.
Even with last fall, with some of the policies that were being discussed, the broker advisory work group got some of the fiercest brokerage competitors together to talk. Oh, you're feeling this heartburn? Yeah, you're feeling this heartburn too. What can we do to sort of elevate the industry? Again, rising tide lifts all boats, to make things more efficient for everyone involved.
Right.
At the start of this conference, we talked about all the VC money and everything that's happening in the industry, and so kind of creating an experience that is more efficient, that takes standards into account, that takes all of those stakeholders into account, I think is really important.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So with that said, I think we burned through a lot of good conversation points here.
Yeah.
Does anybody in the floor have any questions about being an industry relations rep, or how brokers see RESO, or how to get people more involved? Or is everybody taking a nap after their Bloody Mary? Did I miss that? Was there any hamburgers on the top of those, or was it just celery? There was bacon. Bacon's good. It's a warm room. It's dark. Everybody's lulled to sleep. We've, had a good fireside chat. And
there you go.
All right.
Well, we knew we wouldn't take the full time, so thank you everyone for. Oh, there's a question.
Can I just ask you a question? Okay, Catherine McIntosh. Actually, we're breaking out into these groups later, and one of them that Chris and I are running is the industry relations map, the mapping of the interrelations of all the people that are stakeholders like you're talking about. And part of that just came about because we each know our part, but do we understand the experience of the other parts? So perhaps for broker advisory, it's coming with what you know with the intent of learning the other parts and the other stakeholders and how it reaches you. So if there's some way we could tap into that.
Well, and if I could start, actually, Catherine specifically and I had a conversation because, again, I work on the MLS side, right? But most of my industry experience is on the brokerage side, and we had a conversation about standing in the middle of the road and having a brokerage on the left side of the road that was getting data from the right side of the road, and a brokerage on the right side of the road that was getting data from the left side of the road, but they couldn't see each other's data. And I could stand in the middle of the road with a national portal or app, and I could see all of it. But the actual subscribers, the people that were serving the end consumers, couldn't see the whole picture, right? So I think it is important, and the work that you're doing on the mapping and kind of seeing how everybody connect together is important. But I think we do kind of get siloed sometimes. You know, we focus on our own niche.
Yeah, and consumers don't conduct a search based off of MLS jurisdictions.
Nope.
So having that consistency across the board is so important.
Yeah. I recently moved to Colorado, and it's interesting because I find that the conversations are exactly the same as where I came from. There are people that are progressive and want to erode boundaries and make the consumer experience better, and then there's other people that are fearful of change, right? Or they're fearful of loss of income, and they kind of silo in. And this isn't a rehearsed piece, but I would say that, you know, the world eventually will work through those problems, whether we're involved or not. So I think it's really important for us to kind of lead that charge, right? To make sure that we work through and create that. Because if the end consumer can get to it a different way and go around us, that's what $600 million worth of VC money is getting poured into the real estate industry every week right now, right? We need to be ahead of that. We need to work together and have conversations with all the stakeholders.
Yeah, and Catherine, to your point, yeah, we're subject matter experts, but approaching it with a keen eye towards education and learning and working together, I think is crucial.
So, good question. Any other questions? No brave souls. Dana, you didn't throw anything at me the whole session. All right, well, with that, I think we're gonna get you back on track though. We were quick. I really appreciate your time. Thank you, Caitlin.
Thank you, Jeff.
I appreciate it, and please be involved.